The thin gold chain wasn't Cynthia's. I knew her jewelry, the delicate silver pendant she wore daily, the pearl earrings reserved for occasions, the clunky bracelet bought on a whim during our vacation last year. This chain, lying coiled like a tiny snake near the edge of the bathroom counter, partially hidden by her makeup bag, was unfamiliar. It was simple, almost masculine, with a small, tarnished St. Christopher medal attached. My first thought was mundane, maybe a gift she hadn't shown me yet. But something felt off. It wasn't her style, and the way it was almost hidden pricked at a low background hum of unease I'd been trying to ignore for months. Cynthia had been distant, working late more often, her laughter sometimes sounding brittle, forced. Standard marriage friction, I'd told myself. We both had demanding jobs, me managing logistics for a shipping company, her climbing the ladder in corporate finance. Stress piled up. Life happened. I picked up the chain. It felt cool against my skin. The metal was worn smooth in places, the image of the saint barely discernible. It looked old, cherished even. I turned it over in my fingers, my mind casting about for an explanation. A client's lost item, a friend's. But why hide it? Then a memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. Christmas, 2 years ago. Her brother, Michael, had been showing off a similar chain, a gift from their late grandfather. He'd made a joke about needing the patron saint of travelers, given his penchant for ill-advised road trips. I remembered Cynthia teasing him about it, calling it old-fashioned. My stomach tightened. No, it couldn't be. Michael lived 3 states away. He visited occasionally, holidays mostly. They were close, sure, but the idea forming in my head felt monstrous, impossible. I dropped the chain back onto the counter as if it had burned me. My hand trembled slightly. I walked out of the bathroom, needing air, needing space. The house suddenly felt too small. The familiar photos on the mantelpiece, our wedding day, the kids when they were small, Cynthia beaming beside Michael at his college graduation, seeming to mock me. Was I losing my mind, inventing connections where none existed? I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't want, and stared out the window at the quiet suburban street. Cynthia was out. A late meeting, she'd called to say. Another one. How many late meetings had there been? How many times had her phone buzzed late at night, only for her to silence it quickly, murmuring about work emails? The chain wasn't proof of anything, I reasoned, fighting down the rising nausea. It was just a chain. Maybe Michael had lost it on his last visit, months ago, and she'd just found it. Maybe she'd borrowed it for some reason. There had to be a simple explanation, but the unease wouldn't settle. It coiled in my gut, cold and heavy. The image of the chain, nestled beside her things, intimate and out of place, fused with the memory of Michael wearing its twin. It felt like clicking the last piece of a puzzle into place, only to realize the picture it formed was grotesque, unthinkable. Her brother. The thought echoed sickeningly. The man I'd shared beers with, helped move furniture for, trusted implicitly as family. The implications crashed over me, wave after wave. If this was true, it wasn't just infidelity. It was a betrayal so profound, so twisted, it felt like it could unravel the very fabric of reality. I sank onto a kitchen chair, the water untouched beside me. The house was silent except for the ticking clock on the wall, each second amplifying the chaos in my head. I thought of Cynthia's face, her smile, the way she sometimes looked at me across a crowded room. Had it all been a lie? How long? And how could she? How could he? The questions hammered at me, demanding answers I didn't have, answers I wasn't sure I could bear to find. The small, tarnished metal felt like it was still imprinted on my fingertips, a symbol of something sacred desecrated. My world, meticulously built over 20 years, felt like it was tilting, threatening to slide into an abyss. The chain was just a piece of metal, but in that moment, it felt like the key to a door I never wanted to open, revealing a darkness I couldn't have imagined. I sat there, frozen, waiting for the sound of her key in the lock, dreading it, needing it, utterly lost. The sound of the garage door rumbling open jolted me. It was nearly midnight. I quickly splashed water on my face, trying to compose myself, placing the chain back exactly where I found it, tucked slightly under the edge of the makeup bag. I took a deep breath and walked out to the hallway, leaning against the wall, trying to look casual, waiting. Cynthia came in, kicking off her heels near the door with a sigh. "Longest meeting ever," she mumbled, running a hand through her hair. She looked tired, the lines around her eyes more pronounced than usual. She glanced at me, offering a faint, weary smile. "Hey, you're still up?" "Yeah, couldn't sleep," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Everything okay?" "Just office politics, the usual drama." She walked past me towards the kitchen, pulling off her blazer. "Steinman is trying to push his project through again. Had to wrangle the numbers." I watched her movements, searching for something. A flicker in her eyes, a hesitation, a sign that she was lying. But she seemed genuinely exhausted, pouring herself a glass of water with the practiced ease of someone ending a long day. Was the fatigue real or a performance? The doubt was a physical ache in my chest. "Want me to heat up some leftovers?" I asked, following her into the kitchen, standing awkwardly by the island counter. "No, I'm beat. Just going to shower and crash." She finished her water, rinsed the glass, and turned to face me. She reached out, touching my arm lightly. "You look stressed. Everything all right with you?" Her touch felt alien. I forced a nod. "Just work stuff. The usual." "Okay." She squeezed my arm gently before letting go. "Don't stay up too late." She headed upstairs, her footsteps receding down the hall. I stood alone in the quiet kitchen. Her explanation sounded plausible. Corporate finance was a snake pit. Long hours and political maneuvering were part of her reality, and she did look genuinely tired. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the chain was nothing. But the image of it, tarnished and hidden, wouldn't leave me. The connection to Michael felt too strong, too specific. Why hadn't she mentioned finding it? If it was his, lost months ago, wouldn't she have told him? Or told me? Sleep was impossible that night. I lay beside Cynthia, listening to her steady breathing, acutely aware of the space between us. Every slight shift she made, every sigh in her sleep, sent my mind racing. Was she dreaming of him? Had she come from him tonight? The thoughts were poison, seeping into every corner of my mind. Over the next few days, I became an unwilling detective in my own life. I didn't rifle through her drawers or hack into her phone. The thought felt degrading, a violation I wasn't ready for, even now. But I watched, I listened, I paid attention in a way I hadn't before. I noticed how she guarded her phone more closely, angling the screen away, even when reading mundane notifications. I noticed the vague answers about her evenings out. Drinks with the team, networking event, always generic, never specific names or places I could recognize. Once I casually asked about Michael, wondering aloud if we'd heard from him lately. "He called last week," she said, glancing up from her laptop. "Just checking in, asked about the kids." Her tone was perfectly normal, almost breezy. Too breezy? Or was I just projecting suspicion onto everything? The internal debate was exhausting. One moment, I'd convince myself I was being paranoid, driven by stress and insecurity. The next, a small detail, a missed call from a number I didn't recognize, her sudden need to run an errand alone on a Saturday afternoon would send me spiraling back into certainty. I started looking at old photos, trying to see their interactions with new eyes. Pictures from holidays, birthdays, family gatherings. Cynthia and Michael laughing together, heads close. Brother and sister, yes. But was there something else there? A charge, an intimacy that crossed a line? I couldn't be sure. Memory was unreliable, tainted by my current fears. Work suffered. I found myself staring blankly at spreadsheets, logistics charts blurring into meaninglessness. My team noticed my distraction, my fuse shorter than usual. "Everything okay, boss?" my assistant David asked tentatively one afternoon after I'd snapped over a minor scheduling error. "Fine, David. Just got a lot on my mind," I mumbled, turning back to my screen, feeling ashamed. The breaking point, or rather, the point where ambiguity became unbearable, arrived with a simple phone call. It was a Saturday morning. I was making pancakes with the kids, the smell of batter and syrup filling the air, a rare moment of domestic normalcy. Cynthia's phone rang from the living room. "Can you get that, honey?" she called from upstairs, where she was getting dressed. I picked it up from the coffee table without thinking. The screen showed Michael's name and picture. Before I could answer, the call ended. A second later, a text notification popped up. Again, it was Michael. The preview on the lock screen was short, just a few words. "Last night was, call me when you can." My blood ran cold. Last night, she had been working late again. "Crucial deadline," she'd said, arriving home after midnight, slipping into bed beside me without a woo. I dropped the phone back onto the table as if it were contaminated. My hands shook. Last night was, what? Amazing? A mistake? It didn't matter. The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. It confirmed the worst, validated the sickening dread that had been twisting in my gut since I found the chain. "Who was it?" Cynthia asked, coming down the stairs, dressed in jeans and a sweater, looking fresh and rested. "Michael," I said, my voice flat, void of inflection. He hung up, sent a text. She walked over and picked up the phone, her expression unreadable as she unlocked it and read the message. I watched her face intently. Did her breath catch? Did her eyes flicker? Or was I imagining it? She tapped out a quick reply, her thumbs moving efficiently. "Just checking on plans for Mom's birthday," she said, slipping the phone into her pocket, turning towards the kitchen. "Pancakes smell good." She smiled, a normal Saturday morning smile, but I saw right through it. The casual deflection, the immediate pivot back to normalcy. It was too smooth, too practiced. The text wasn't about her mother's birthday, it was about last night. I stood there, spatula dripping batter onto the floor, the sound of the kids laughing in the background suddenly distant and muted. The world narrowed to Cynthia's back as she walked away from me, towards the illusion of our normal life. The chain, the late nights, the guarded phone, the text message, it all slotted into place. It wasn't just infidelity, It was this, unthinkable, grotesque, her own brother. The rage came then, cold and sharp, slicing through the fog of confusion and grief. It wasn't loud or explosive, but a deep internal tremor. I wanted to smash something, to scream, to confront her right there, in front of the kids, and demand the truth, watch her lies crumble. But I didn't. Some instinct for self-preservation, perhaps, or maybe just the sheer paralyzing shock of it, held me rooted to the spot. The betrayal felt enormous, a gaping wound torn through the center of my life, yet the surface remained deceptively calm. Cynthia started setting the table, humming softly. She glanced back at me. "You coming?" I looked at her, truly looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, the person I thought I knew better than myself. And all I saw was a stranger hiding an unimaginable secret behind a familiar smile. The pancakes sizzled on the griddle, forgotten. The kids' chatter faded into white noise. There was only the vast, silent chasm that had opened between us. I knew with chilling certainty that nothing would ever be the same. The life we had built was a ruin, and I was standing alone in the wreckage. The air felt thin, hard to breathe, utterly, devastatingly alone. Somehow I managed to sit through breakfast. The pancakes tasted like cardboard, the coffee bitter ash in my mouth. I watched my hands move, cutting food for my daughter, passing the syrup to my son, engaging in the automatic responses of a Saturday morning ritual. But I wasn't really there. I was watching a play unfold from a great distance, a spectator to my own life. Cynthia chatted easily with the kids, asking about school, friends, weekend plans. She laughed at something my son said, a bright, genuine sound that twisted something sharp inside me. How could she sit there, so unchanged, so normal, after last night? The word echoed Michael's text. Each cheerful interaction felt like a performance designed solely to deceive me, or perhaps worse, a sign that this deception had become so ingrained it was now effortless, her reality. I studied her face across the table, the curve of her cheek, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled at our daughter. Years of shared memories, struggles, joys, all felt contaminated now, viewed through the lens of this horrifying truth. Did Michael see the same expression last night? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. After breakfast, the pretense continued. The kids wanted to go to the park. Cynthia agreed readily. "You comin', Dad?" my son asked, already pulling on his sneakers. "Maybe later," I managed, needing space, needing to escape the suffocating normalcy. "Got some work emails to catch up on." Cynthia gave me a brief, searching look. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I lied again, turning away. "Just need an hour or two." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded, shepherding the kids out the door. The click of the lock echoed in the sudden silence. Alone in the house, the carefully constructed dam inside me began to crack. The rage I'd suppressed at the breakfast table surged, hot and suffocating. I walked into the living room, my fists clenched, wanting to roar, to smash the framed photos lining the mantelpiece, images of a life that now felt like a fraud. Instead, I sank onto the sofa, burying my face in my hands. The full weight of it pressed down on me. It wasn't just the betrayal of infidelity, which would have been devastating enough. It was the grotesque nature of it, her brother, family, blood. It felt like a violation of something fundamental, something sacred. What kind of person did this? What kind of sickness lived inside her, inside him, that allowed this boundary to be crossed? And the lies. Years of them, perhaps. The late nights, the business trips, the distance I'd attributed to stress or marital drift. Had it all been this? How many times had Michael visited, stayed in our guest room, eaten at our table while this thing was happening? The complicity felt staggering. I lifted my head, staring blankly at the television screen. My reflection stared back, a man hollowed out, aged overnight. What did I do now? Confront her? The thought of voicing the accusation aloud, of watching her reaction, denial, confession, justification, made me feel physically ill. Could I even say the words? Are you sleeping with your brother? Pack a bag and leave? Just walk away from the house, the kids, the 20 years of shared history? The thought offered a fleeting sense of escape, but the reality of abandoning my children, of leaving them in that situation, was unbearable. They deserved better than to be collateral damage in their mother's depravity. Could I pretend I didn't know? Try to salvage something? The idea died before it fully formed. The knowledge was a cancer eating away at me. Every touch, every conversation, every shared meal would be poisoned by it. There was no going back to ignorance. I thought about the chain again, the small St. Christopher medal, patron saint of travelers. Had Michael given it back to her? Or had she taken it from him last night? A token? A reminder? The questions kept circling, each one more sickening than the last. Driven by a grim compulsion, I went upstairs to the bathroom. The chain was still there, partially hidden. I picked it up, its weight familiar now, repulsive. I held it tightly in my fist, the metal digging into my palm. This small object felt like the only tangible piece of evidence in a world that had become surreal and unstable. When Cynthia and the kids returned a few hours later, laughing about a dog chasing a squirrel at the park, I had retreated into a cold, watchful calm. The rage had subsided, replaced by a chilling clarity. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't pretend. Something had to break. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I found Cynthia in the living room, reading a book. The house was quiet again, the air thick with unspoken tension. I walked over and stood in front of her, waiting until she looked up, her expression questioning. I didn't plan what I was going to say. The words came out low, steady, devoid of the storm raging inside me. I know, Cynthia. She frowned slightly, bookmarking her page. Know what? About you, about Michael. I saw the flicker then, a split second of panic in her eyes before her mask of confusion slammed back into place. But I'd seen it. Michael? She repeated, her voice carefully neutral. What about Michael? Don't, I said, the single word sharp enough to make her flinch. Don't insult me by pretending you don't understand. She stared at me, her composure starting to fray at the edges. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her book. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you feeling okay? You've been acting strange all day. Gaslighting, deflection, the standard tactics, but the fear in her eyes was real. She knew she was cornered. I reached into my pocket and slowly opened my hand. The gold chain with the St. Christopher medal lay coiled on my palm. Recognize this? Her face went utterly pale. She stared at the chain as if it were an apparition. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The silence stretched, heavy and damning. Her carefully constructed world was shattering around her, and the architect of its destruction was this small, tarnished piece of metal in my hand. "He wore it at Christmas 2 years ago," I continued, my voice still unnervingly calm. "Granddad's chain, remember? Funny how it ended up in our bathroom this week. Funny how he texted you this morning about last night." Her eyes darted towards the stairs, as if checking if the children could hear. Then they snapped back to me, wide with a mixture of terror and something else. Defiance, resignation. "Paul," she started, her voice trembling now. I didn't let her finish. I didn't want excuses, justifications, or twisted logic. The simple, horrifying truth was enough. It filled the room, thick and poisonous. The image of her, of him, burned behind my eyes. The years of lies, the profound desecration of family, of trust, of everything I thought our life represented. It all culminated in this moment, in this silent standoff in our quiet living room. The chain felt heavy in my hand, a dead weight. The betrayal was absolute, leaving nothing but emptiness. Cold, hollow emptiness. Cynthia crumpled, not physically falling, but collapsing inward, her shoulders slumping as if the strings holding her upright had been cut. The book slid from her lap, landing silently on the rug. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over and tracing paths down her pale cheeks. "Paul, Her voice broke, dissolving into a choked sob. She covered her face with her hands, her body shaking. I watched her break down, but felt strangely detached. The storm inside me had passed, leaving behind a vast, unnerving calm. There was no satisfaction in her tears, no vindication in her exposure. There was only the cold, hard fact of the betrayal, sitting between us like a physical object. The chain in my hand felt like proof, yes, but also like an anchor dragging me down into this new, bleak reality. "How long?" I asked, the question quiet but demanding. She shook her head, her sobs muffling her words. It wasn't supposed to. Oh God, Paul." Her fragmented explanation, her attempts to frame it as something unintended, something that just happened, washed over me without impact. It didn't matter how it started. It mattered what it became. It mattered that she chose it again and again. Last night. "Was it him?" I asked, needing to hear it, needing the final, ugly confirmation. "The late nights? The trips?" She couldn't meet my eyes. She just nodded mutely, her shoulders heaving. Her brother. The confirmation didn't bring fresh rage, only a deeper layer of coldness, a profound sense of alienation from the woman sitting shattered before me. The person I had built a life with, trusted completely, loved deeply. She was capable of this. The intimacy we shared felt retroactively violated, every memory tainted. I looked around the living room, the comfortable sofa, the family photos, the books lining the shelves. It was the stage set for a life, a carefully curated image of happiness and normalcy. Now it felt like a hollow shell, the foundations rotted away from the inside by secrets and decay. What now? The question hammered again. Divorce lawyers, custody battles, explaining the unexplainable to our children? The logistics felt overwhelming, petty almost, compared to the enormity of the betrayal itself. How do you divide assets when the core trust has been so fundamentally broken, so grotesquely violated? Cynthia looked up, her face blotchy, desperate. "Paul, please," she whispered. Don't, don't tell anyone. Please, think of the kids." Her plea, focused on containment, on secrecy, solidified something in me. It wasn't remorse for the act itself. Not really. It was fear of exposure, fear of the consequences. Even now, her priority was managing the fallout, preserving the facade. I closed my hand around the chain, the metal cool against my skin, the St. Christopher medal dug into my palm. Patron saint of travelers. Maybe it was a sign after all, a sign that my journey with her was over. I turned without another word and walked towards the hall closet. My movements felt deliberate, almost robotic. I pulled out the old duffel bag I used for weekend trips, placing it on the floor. Cynthia scrambled up from the sofa. "Paul, what are you doing? Where are you going?" Her voice rose in panic. "We can talk about this. We can fix this." Fix this? The idea was ludicrous. Some things couldn't be fixed. Some things shattered so completely there was nothing left to piece back together. This wasn't a crack. It was a chasm. I started walking towards the stairs, towards the bedroom, the duffel bag bumping against my leg. Her pleas followed me, desperate and broken, but they sounded distant, like noise from another room, another life. My mind wasn't on fixing anything. It was on the chain still clenched in my fist. It was on Michael's text. It was on the faces of my children sleeping upstairs, oblivious. It was on the wreckage of 20 years, smoldering around me. I reached the top of the stairs, the path ahead unclear, the future a terrifying blank. All I knew was that I couldn't stay here, couldn't breathe this poisoned air. The chain felt like it burned in my hand. Empty, just empty. I walked into our bedroom. Her scent lingered faintly in the air, the perfume I'd bought her last Christmas. It smelled like betrayal now. I opened the closet, pulling out shirts, pants, socks, underwear, stuffing them into the duffel bag without folding, without care. Each item felt like a relic from a different life, a life that ended an hour ago in the living room. Her voice drifted up the stairs, muffled pleas mixing with choked sobs. "Paul, don't do this. Think about us. Think about the children." The children. The thought was a physical blow. Leaving them felt like tearing off a limb. But staying, exposing them daily to this toxicity, this lie, living under the same roof as her, knowing what she'd done, who she'd done it with. It was impossible. Staying would destroy me, and a broken father was no good to them either. This felt like the lesser of two unthinkable evils. I zipped the bag shut. It wasn't heavy. A few days' worth of clothes, toiletries. I grabbed my wallet and keys from the nightstand. My eyes caught a framed photo beside the bed. The four of us on a beach vacation, squinting happily into the sun. Cynthia had her arm slung around Michael's shoulder in the background, both laughing. Brother and sister. I looked away, the image burning. Downstairs, she was waiting at the bottom step, her face streaked with tears, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Please, Paul, don't leave. We can work through this. Therapy. Anything." I looked at her, really looked at her, one last time. The desperation in her eyes seemed genuine, but it didn't move me. The damage was too deep, the nature of the betrayal too fundamental. It wasn't about forgiveness, it was about impossibility. The trust wasn't just broken, it was annihilated. "There's no us to work through, Cynthia," I said, my voice flat. "There's nothing left." I stepped around her, walking towards the front door. She didn't try to stop me physically, just watched, her expression crumbling into utter despair. I opened the door, the cool night air hitting my face. It felt clean after the stifling atmosphere inside. I didn't look back. I walked down the path, got into my car, and started the engine. The headlights sliced through the darkness of the familiar street. Where was I going? I had no idea. Didn't matter. Just away. The engine hummed, steady, away from the wreckage, just away. The car moved through the sleeping town, streetlights washing over the dashboard in rhythmic pulses. I drove without direction, taking random turns, the engine a low drone against the silence in the car. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, the only sign of the tension coiled deep inside me. Numbness had settled in, a heavy blanket smothering the sharp edges of pain and rage. Where do I go? A motel? A friend's place? Explaining this felt impossible, the words caught somewhere between my throat and my stomach. Explaining that my wife, the mother of my children, was sleeping with her own brother. It sounded like something out of a cheap, sordid drama, not my life. I found myself on a dark stretch of road outside of town, pulling over onto the gravel shoulder. The engine ticked as it cooled. Crickets chirped somewhere in the darkness. I cut the headlights, plunging the car into near total blackness. Leaning my head back against the seat, I closed my eyes. The image of the chain, small and tarnished, flashed behind my eyelids. Then Cynthia's tear-streaked face. Then Michael's picture on her phone. What happens tomorrow? What happens in an hour? The questions floated, unanswered. There was just this moment, sitting alone in the dark, the weight of everything pressing down. The future was a void, empty, just empty.